Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight, understand this. What they started, they can't undo. Because once fear replaces curiosity, the game is over. They don't look at you the same anymore. They don't speak around you the same anymore. Every move you make now carries weight. Not because you're trying to be seen, but because they know what you've survived. And that knowledge, it changed everything. They used to whisper about you. Now they hesitate. They used to laugh. Now they measure their words. Because something shifted the moment they realized you don't react like normal people. You don't panic. You don't fold. You don't explain. You observe and you move. And that kind of presence, it makes people uncomfortable in ways they can't explain. Now they're watching patterns that don't exist. Overanalyzing silence that wasn't even meant for them. Trying to decode your calm like it's some kind of strategy. When in reality, it's just who you've become. You reached a point where chaos doesn't shake you anymore. It refines you. It sharpens you. It turns you into something that doesn't need approval to keep going. And here's what really disturbs them. You didn't become heartless. You became precise. Every emotion you feel is controlled. Every reaction it's chosen. There's no wasted movement, no unnecessary noise, just intention. And that's what makes you dangerous. Because unpredictable people cause fear. But controlled people, they create pressure. Now imagine being them, lying awake at night, replaying everything they found about you, every moment they thought would destroy you, every situation that should have ended you, and realizing you're still here, not just alive, but stronger. That realization doesn't just scare them, it humbles them in a way they'll never admit. Because deep down, they know something they can't say out loud. If they lived your life, they wouldn't have survived it. And that truth, it eats at them. Slowly, quietly, relentlessly. That's why your presence feels different now. It's not loud, but it's heavy. It doesn't demand attention, but it commands it anyway. Because people can feel when someone has walked through darkness and didn't lose themselves. They became something else entirely. So you don't need to prove anything. Not anymore. The fact they spent everything trying to break you and failed already said everything that needed to be said. The fact they dug into your past and found strength instead of weakness already ended the conversation. Now all that's left is distance. Not because you pushed them away, but because they don't know how to stand next to something they can't affect, something they can't influence, something they can't understand. And that's your power. Not what you say, not what you show, but what you've become. A presence that doesn't shake. A mind that doesn't fold. A soul that doesn't depend on anything outside itself to keep going, so keep moving. Quietly, precisely, unapologetically. Let them watch, let them wonder, let them sit with the realization that everything they tried only made you stronger. Because in the end, they didn't ruin you. They revealed you. And what they found wasn't something fragile. It was something they'll never forget. And here's the part nobody prepares for. What happens after they realize. Because fear doesn't disappear. It evolves. At first they tried to expose you. Now they avoid you. Not openly, but mentally. Every word they say around you is filtered. Every action is calculated because they don't know how much you know. And that uncertainty controls them. You didn't confront them. You didn't expose them. You didn't react. You just kept moving, like they were never even important enough to acknowledge. And that silence, it's heavier than revenge. Because revenge ends things. Your silence keeps them thinking, keeps them stuck, keeps them questioning every move they made. And that's the part that really unsettles them, the part they can't process, the part that doesn't make sense no matter how many times they replay it in their minds. You didn't just survive. You became comfortable in places that were meant to destroy you. Most people break once and spend the rest of their lives avoiding pressure. But pressure became your environment. Chaos became your teacher. Pain became your blueprint. And now you move through situations that would crush others. Like it's normal. Like it's nothing. That's not something they can study. That's not something they can copy. That's something you earn. Alone. In silence. When nobody is watching. When nobody is helping. When nobody even knows what you're going through. And that's why they can't figure you out. Because everything they found about you doesn't match how you move now. The past they uncovered should have left you broken, insecure, hesitant. But instead, it built something stable, something controlled, something they can't shake. Now every time they think they understand you do something that reminds them they don't. Not because you're trying to confuse them, but because you're not operating from the same level anymore. You're not reacting to life. You're responding with awareness. And that difference, it's everything. They're still emotional, still impulsive, still tied to outcomes. While you detached from the noise. You stopped letting external chaos dictate internal stability. And now you carry something they don't. Something they can't fake. Something they can't force. Inner control. And that kind of control, it doesn't just influence your life. It affects everyone around you. People feel it. They sense it. They react to it, even if they don't understand it. That's why rooms go quiet in subtle ways. That's why conversations shift when you're present. That's why energy changes without a single word being said. Because you're not just another person in the room anymore. You're a presence that forces awareness. And most people aren't comfortable being aware. They prefer distraction. They prefer noise. They prefer illusion. But you walk in clarity. And clarity exposes everything. That's why they keep their distance now. Not out of hate, but out of self-preservation. Because standing too close to you means confronting parts of themselves they've been avoiding. It means seeing their own weaknesses reflected in your strength. It means realizing how much they still have to grow. And not everyone is ready for that. So they step back, they watch, they observe from a distance where it feels safe, where they don't have to question themselves too deeply. But even from there, they can't ignore what you've become. And here's the truth that hits hardest. You didn't do this to impress anyone. You didn't do this to prove anything. You didn't do this to be seen. You did it because you had no choice. Because life demanded it. Because circumstances forced you to either evolve or disappear. And you chose evolution. That's why your strength feels different. It's not performance, it's not image. It's not something you switch on and off. It's built into you. It's who you are now. And that's why it can't be taken away. They can't study it. They can't break it. They can't recreate it. Because they weren't there when it was formed. They didn't feel what you felt. They didn't face what you faced. They didn't endure what you endured. So now all they're left with is acceptance. Quiet, uncomfortable acceptance. The kind that doesn't come with applause, but with silence. The kind that doesn't celebrate you, but respects you from a distance. And honestly, that's more powerful than approval will ever be. Because approval is temporary. Respect built from fear and understanding, that stays. So don't go backwards. Don't soften just to make others comfortable. Don't dim what you've built just so to keep becoming more of what you already are. Because the truth is, they didn't just lose sleep over what they found. They lost certainty. They lost the illusion that they understood everything. They lost the belief that people like you can be controlled, predicted, or broken. And once that illusion is gone, it never comes back. Now every time they see you, they're reminded of that loss, that shift, that moment everything they thought they knew stopped making sense. And that's your impact. Not loud, not forced, not explained, just real, just present, just undeniable. So keep moving the way you do. Calm, focused, unshaken. Let them think, let them wonder, let them sit with everything they uncovered. Because at the end of it all, the deeper truth remains the same. They went looking for your limits, and instead, they found none. And when someone realizes there's no clear limit to you, something inside them breaks quietly. Not loud, not dramatic, just a silent shift they can't reverse. Because limits are what make people feel safe. Limits make things predictable. Limits give them the illusion that everything can be measured, controlled, contained. But you stepped outside of that, and now they don't know where you end. They don't know what triggers you. They don't know what pushes you. They don't know what you're capable of anymore. And that unknown, it's heavier than anything they expected to find. So they start doing something subtle, something almost invisible. They stop underestimating you. Completely, not partially, not occasionally, completely. And that alone changes how they exist around you. Because once someone stops underestimating you, they start respecting the possibility that you can't be handled the way others can. Now even your silence feels intentional to them. Even your absence feels like strategy. Even your calm feels like control. And the truth? You're not even trying to create that effect. It just happens because of what you've become. You reached a level where you don't chase attention, but attention follows you. Not the loud kind, not the fake kind, but the quiet awareness people carry when they know they're standing near something different, something they can't label, something they can't simplify, something they can't reduce to a story that makes them feel comfortable again. And that discomfort, it forces growth or distance, and most people choose distance. Not because they hate you, but because growth requires facing things they're not ready to face. So they keep their space. They watch from afar. They analyze in silence, but they don't interfere anymore. Because interfering with something they don't understand, that's a risk they already learned not to take. And here's where it gets even deeper. You don't even feel the need to correct them. You don't feel the need to explain who you are. You don't feel the need to clear misunderstandings. Because you're no longer dependent on perception. You know who you are. And that's enough. That's the kind of self-positioning that can't be shaken by opinions, rumors, or assumptions. And once someone reaches that point, external noise loses its power completely. That's why their efforts failed. Not because they didn't try hard enough, but because they were fighting something that doesn't rely on external validation to stand strong. They were trying to shake something that doesn't depend on them to stay stable. And that realization, it changes how they see everything, not just you, but themselves. Because now they're forced to ask questions they avoided before. Why couldn't we break him? Why didn't it work? What is he made of that we're not? And those questions don't have easy answers. They don't have quick explanations. They require honesty. And honesty is something most people struggle with when it turns inward. So instead of answering those questions, they step back. They accept what they can't understand. They adjust how they move around you. And that adjustment, that's your impact. You didn't force it. You didn't demand it. You didn't even acknowledge it. You simply became something they had to respond to. And that's power in its purest form, not control over others, but control over yourself so deep. It changes how others move without you even trying. So don't look for reactions. Don't look for confirmation. Don't look for signs that they've changed. It already happened. In silence. In distance. In the way they no longer approach you the same way. That's your confirmation. Now all that's left is your path. Your evolution. Your next level. Because while they're still processing who you've become, you're already becoming something beyond that. And that gap, it will only keep growing until one day they won't even try to understand you anymore. Not because they don't care. Now they replay everything. Every moment they underestimated you. Every time they thought they had you figured out. Every assumption they made that collapsed in front of reality. And it's exhausting them, because the more they think about you, the more they realize something they can't escape. You were never playing the same game. You were evolving while they were observing. You were building while they were analyzing. You were becoming while they were doubting. And now the gap between you and them, it's not small. It's unreachable. That's why your presence creates pressure now. Not fear from what you might do, but fear from what you already are. A person who faced everything meant to break them, and turned it into structure, into control, into something stable and unshakable. And here's what really stays with them. You're not done. Everything they uncovered was your past. That was the version of you still learning, still adapting, still forming. They didn't even touch what you're becoming now. And that unknown version of you, that's what truly disturbs them. Because if this version of you is already unbreakable, what happens when you fully step into your power? What happens when you stop holding back? What happens when your silence turns into action? They don't want the answer. They just feel the weight of the question. So they stop digging. They stop searching. They stop trying to understand. Because some things, once understood, can't be controlled. And you became one of those things. Now when your name comes up, it's not curiosity anymore. It's not judgment. It's not even hate. It's something quieter, heavier, something that sits in the chest and tightens the breath. A silent warning they don't say out loud, but all of them feel. Stay away, because they finally understand. You were never fragile. You were never easy. You were never something they could break. You were something they should have respected from the beginning. But they learned it too late. And now they live with it. The realization, the pressure, the awareness that everything they tried failed. Not because you fought them, but because you outgrew the need to. So walk forward. No noise, no explanation, no hesitation. Just presence. Just control. Just evolution, and let them sit with the truth they uncovered with their own hands. That no matter how deep they dig, no matter how much they spend, no matter how hard they try, you don't fall, you rise again. and again, and again, until rising isn't effort anymore. It's who you are.